Have you ever looked at your investment account and wondered if you are actually making progress? Maybe you saved a few $1,000s. Maybe you worked for years and finally reached 20 or 30,000. And no matter how far you get, that $1 million goal still feels impossibly far away. For most people, becoming a millionaire feels like something that only happens to other people. People with higher salaries, people who got lucky, people who started early. But here is something that almost nobody realizes. When you reach $100,000, you are already much closer to $1 million than you think. In fact, from a mathematical point of view, you are already about 1/3 of the way there. That sounds crazy. It sounds almost wrong. But once you understand the math behind it, it changes how you see money forever. My name is Quinn, and welcome back to Quinn Invests US. On this channel, we don't just talk about money goals, we talk about how money actually grows, slowly, quietly, over time. And today, we are breaking down the surprising math that explains why $100,000 is such a powerful milestone. Before we get into numbers, let me paint a picture of how most people think wealth is built. Most people imagine wealth building as a straight line. Save $10,000, you are 10,000 closer to your goal. Save 50,000, you are 50,000 closer. Save 100,000, you are 100,000 closer. Simple, logical, linear. But that mental model is completely wrong, and that misunderstanding is exactly why so many people give up too early. They invest for a few years, they see slow progress, and they think, at this pace, I'll never get there. If wealth really grew in a straight line, they would be right. But money does not grow that way. When money is invested correctly, it does not just sit there. It works, it earns. And then those earnings start earning as well. This is called compound growth. You've probably heard the term before, but most people do not truly understand what it means in practice. Compound growth means that time matters more than effort. In the beginning, progress feels slow, painfully slow. Later, progress speeds up, sometimes faster than you expect. This is why $100,000 is such a big deal. Not because it is a large number by itself, but because of what happens after that point. Let's look at this with real numbers. Imagine you invest consistently and earn an average return over time. Nothing extreme, nothing unrealistic. In the early years, almost all of your portfolio growth comes from your own contributions. You put in money, that money grows a little, but most of the progress comes from you working and saving. That is the hardest phase. Now compare that to later years. Once your portfolio reaches around $100,000, something shifts. Your money starts doing more of the work. A 10% return on $10,000 is only $1,000. A 10% return on $100,000 is $10,000. Same market, same return. Completely different result. This is why the road from $0 to $100,000 feels so long, and why the road from $100,000 to $1 million is often shorter than people expect. Not easy, but faster. Think of it like pushing a heavy object. At first, it barely moves. You use all your strength and nothing seems to happen. But once it starts rolling, keeping it moving becomes much easier. $100,000 is the point where the object starts rolling. Now let's talk about why people misunderstand this so badly. Most people focus only on the final goal, $1 million. That number feels huge, overwhelming, unreachable. So they compare where they are now to 1 million instead of looking at the growth curve. At $10,000, growth feels meaningless. At $30,000, it still feels slow. At $50,000, doubts appear. But mathematically, those early years are the most important ones. They are the years where you are buying time. They are the years where you are setting up compounding. This is also why many people quit investing right before it starts to matter. They leave the gym before the results show. They stop right before momentum builds. Now let's put this into a very simple example. Imagine someone invests $100 every week. That is about $400 per month. Not nothing, but also not extreme. For many people, that is the cost of eating out a few times. In the first years, the account grows slowly. It feels unimpressive. But over time, those weekly contributions stack up. Eventually, the account reaches $100,000. At that point, something important changes. Market returns begin to add thousands of dollars per year, sometimes without you adding anything extra. Your money starts helping you. This is the moment where wealth building becomes less about discipline and more about patience. And this is why $100,000 is often described as the hardest milestone. Not because it is the biggest number, but because it requires the most effort relative to visible results. From 0 to 100,000, you do almost all the work. From 100,000 onward, your money starts sharing the workload. This does not mean you stop investing. It means investing finally feels rewarding. Another mistake people make is assuming this only works for high earners. It does not. Income helps. But behavior matters more. Someone with a moderate income who invests consistently for years can reach $100,000. Someone with a high income who spends everything often never does. Wealth is not built by income alone. It is built by consistency plus time. Now here's the part that really surprises people. The path to $1 million is not evenly divided. The first $100,000 often takes the longest. The next $100,000 takes less time, then less time again, then less. Not because you work harder, but because compound growth accelerates. This is why saying $100,000 is 1/3 of the way to $1 million actually makes sense. Not in distance, but in effort. The hardest third is behind you. And that realization changes motivation. Instead of feeling far away, the goal starts to feel possible. That shift in mindset matters. Because once you believe progress is real, you are more likely to stay consistent. Consistency is what turns math into reality. Now let's bring this back to real life. If you are below $100,000, this video is not meant to discourage you. It is meant to explain why the struggle feels real. You are not failing. You are in the hardest part. If you are around $100,000, this video should give you confidence. You built the foundation. Now you need patience. And if you are above $100,000, this video should remind you why staying invested matters more than trying to be perfect. Markets will move, there will be crashes, there will be fear, but compound growth only works if you stay in the game. The biggest enemy of compounding is not bad returns, it is quitting too early. So the real lesson here is simple. Stop thinking about wealth as a straight line. Start thinking in curves. Early progress is slow, later progress is faster. And once momentum builds, the numbers begin to surprise you. That is why $100,000 matters. Not because it is rich, but because it means the system is working. And when the system is working, time becomes your ally. Let's slow this down even more because this part is where many people still get confused. When people hear that $100,000 is such an important milestone, they often think it means everything becomes easy after that point. That is not true. What actually changes is how progress feels. Before $100,000, effort feels heavy and results feel small. After $100,000, effort feels lighter and results feel more visible. That difference is psychological, not magical. The work does not disappear, but the feedback improves. And feedback is what keeps people going. Think about how motivation works. When you go to the gym and see no results for months, motivation drops. When you finally see progress in the mirror, motivation increases, even if the workouts stay the same. Money works the same way. Before $100,000, most growth comes from discipline. You save, you invest, you say no to things. After $100,000, growth starts coming from the system itself. Markets move, dividends arrive, returns show up without extra effort. That makes patience easier. Another important point most people miss is risk perception. When your portfolio is small, every dollar feels fragile. A market drop feels personal, a loss feels painful. When your portfolio grows, your perspective changes. You stop focusing on daily movement, you start thinking in years. That mental shift is part of why wealth compounds faster later on. Not because markets change, but because your behavior improves. You panic less, you react less, you stay invested more easily. And staying invested is what compound growth requires. Let's also talk about time, because time is often misunderstood. Many people think compounding only works if you start very young. Starting early helps, but starting consistently matters more. Someone who starts later but stays consistent for 20 years can still build serious wealth. The reason $100,000 matters is that it proves consistency. It proves that you didn't quit. It proves that you stayed the course long enough for the system to start working. That proof builds confidence. Confidence leads to better decisions. Better decisions lead to better outcomes. Another thing worth mentioning is income growth. For many people, income increases over time. Careers advance, skills improve. That means contributions often grow after the first decade. This adds fuel to compounding. Early on, you invest small amounts. Later, you invest larger amounts. At the same time, your existing money is already working. That combination is powerful. This is why wealth often seems to accelerate suddenly. From the outside, it looks like luck. From the inside, it feels slow and boring for many years. Now let's address a common emotional trap. People often compare themselves to others. Someone else reached $100,000 faster. Someone else has more invested. Someone else started earlier. That comparison is useless. Compound growth is personal. What matters is staying in your own system long enough for momentum to build. Once momentum exists, comparison loses its power. You stop caring about speed. You care about direction, and direction is what determines the final outcome. One more important reminder: reaching $100,000 does not mean you should take more risk. It does not mean you should chase returns. In fact, protecting what you built becomes more important. Consistency beats optimization. Staying invested beats timing. Avoiding big mistakes matters more than making perfect choices. This is how most long-term wealth is actually built, not with brilliance, but with discipline. So if you are still far from $100,000, understand this: you are not behind. You are in the hardest phase. And if you are close to $100,000, understand this: you are closer than it feels. Momentum is near. And if you are already past $100,000, understand this: your job now is patience. Let time do what it does best, because once compounding truly starts working, progress becomes quieter, steadier, and more powerful. That is the surprising math behind $100,000. Not that it makes you rich, but that it proves the system works. And when the system works, the path to 1 million becomes realistic. Not overnight, but inevitably.